So, following the One D&D news, the next PDF Unearthed Arcana has been released, which deals with the expert classes as well as gives us some updates on feats, as well as a few other spells and so on. Now, first, let's talk about the expert classes themselves. Bard is the first one on this list. Now, the first change is, as kind of was brought up with the first One D&D packet, spells are now split into arcane, primal, and divine spell lists, which I'm not quite sure how I feel about. One thing that was nice is that you get unique spells in certain classes. Bard is one that doesn't, but it benefits from having such a conglomerate of, except Vicious Mockery, having such a conglomerate of spells. Actually, I think well, anyways, the conglomerate of spells that they can use and that aren't necessarily original, but at least they're sort of go with that jack of all trades sort of style. So that's interesting, but I'm a bit tentative about it because it means that the actual class itself will have to pull more weight rather than the lists themselves, right? And I don't think they necessarily do that, which make it we'll just get into it. The first major change is very interesting. It's essentially, there is good things and bad things. The good part is that whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace any spell you've prepared for the Bard class with another arcane spell of the same level. But the spells you choose for the Bard this have to be divination, enchantment, illusion, or transmutation, which does add variety between the different schools, right? Because if you're wizard, you're going to have access to all schools, obviously, because they're keeping pretty much the same subclasses. This is a sort of interesting change, but we'll get more into it more later. So, sort of looking at their abilities, bards start with getting bardic inspiration at first level and spellcasting. So nothing new there, right? Second level, though, they get expertise and the Song of Restoration. Now, I like the Song of Restoration better than Song of Rest. Song of Rest kind of fell by the wayside a lot. I think Wizards of the Coast is starting to realize that short rests aren't used as often as they would expect. So the Song of Restoration is essentially just an extra spell list that doesn't count against the spells you know. So it's that you can get divine spells. At second level, you get Healing Word. At fourth, you get Lesser Restoration. At sixth, you get Mass Healing Word. At eighth, you get Freedom of Movement. And at 10th, you get Greater Restoration. Freedom of Movement is kind of an odd one. I don't really know what you'd replace it with. Maybe another thing that's more on the support side. But like maybe Greater Restoration is 8th level. No, it's 5th. Well, anyways, but it would be nice to get something like Regeneration in there. But I think this is solid because they're from the Arcane spell list. You don't get support spells, which is kind of, well, anyways. Now moving on, we'll also get expertise at second level instead of Jack of all trades, which I'll just go ahead and mention right now. They don't get until 5th level. Now, I'm going to take a moment to talk about what I consider passive and active effects. Passive effects are like Jack of all trades. It's a passive +1 buff to all skill checks you aren't proficient in, right? This is something that, as a player, is less rewarding because that +1 is not something that's noticeable. Now, when you get to 5th level, yes, you'll get 5th level spells. But just getting Jack of all trades as a level up feature, it's like similar to kind of the issue with Monk, where in the middle levels, they just kind of fall by the wayside. You get, Sun and Tongue of Moon and not really aging, which, yeah, sure, they're abilities that have use and utility, but as a player, is knowing all languages going to necessarily help on a encounter to encounter basis? And the answer is no. So that's why, as a 2nd level feature, it has more significance because you're lower level. And then expertise, which would normally come at 3rd level, is something that, I don't want to get expertise on 1st level. I mean, you can, that's kind of the trait of the rogue, but getting expertise so early on, because you're already good at things with proficiency, and then later you get that kind of buff of getting better at something, right? So for me, I like the progression of leveling up, because then it's not, why am I pushing for a level up, or what do I get from progressing if I really don't get much with each level up? So that's probably my one concern. But again, I'm also looking at this from a perspective of bias, because we've lived through the age of 5e where we did get Bardic Jack of all trades earlier on and expertise later. So for me, it feels natural. And the same with getting Font of Inspiration at 7th level, right? It's something that I'm used to getting 5th level, so I would like it 5th level. And because I don't think Jack of all trades is, 5th level should feel big. Jack of all, Font of Inspiration doesn't feel significant enough. I mean, Jack of all trades doesn't feel significant enough for the 5th level feature, and Font of Inspiration feels a lot stronger because you're essentially going from 4 or 5 inspiration a day to potentially, if you get a short rest, 8 to 10, which is a huge difference. But again, these are all minor, basically mostly minor issues. Just moving the levels around. Kind of the biggest change so far has been with spells. But let's talk about the actual change to Bardic Inspiration. So what they did here is they made it so that now, instead of a bonus action, it's a reaction. Well, what does this mean? Well, essentially, bonus actions are cheaper, right? There's less things you can do with a bonus action. Yeah, sure, there's a few spells like Healing Word that are beneficial as a bonus action. But for the most part, if you aren't martial or you don't have innate abilities, these are choices you can make to have bonus actions, but you're not going to begin with them. Reactions are almost always useful, whether that be, silvery barbs, opportunity attacks. They are things that allow you to react to situations, and having one reaction, shield or whatever, it's an economy that is very valuable to use. But I would say, even though it's more valuable, that is the trade-off here. Because, okay, so I give an ally, so before I would have given an ally inspiration as a bonus action. And then they might have used it. In this scenario, as a reaction, when I see someone fail, I can give them inspiration. But there's another way you get to use inspiration, which is immediately after a creature within 60 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to roll inspiration and restore the number of hit points to them. This is really good, because you can essentially, the minute they drop down, you just expend inspiration and they're back up, which is huge, because you're basically guaranteeing that there's not losing any action economy, and it's not preventative damage, it's healing. So if they go down to 0, it's honestly, I'm fine with that change, because reaction is more instant, and yes, it's a resource, but you're expending more and there's more benefit to it. And then again, I'm fine with them kind of pushing it back to 7, because I think Bardic Inspiration is better now. The only thing that sucks is if you're a subclass that uses Bardic Inspiration for something else, you're not going to be able to get that back into short rest. Like if you're a Swords Bard, you have to wait till 7th level. Like that sucks. But anyways, so essentially the D20 test has a lot of benefits as well, because it's when a creature you can see or hear fails a D20 test. There's nothing about anything else, which means, you know, boom, saving throw fails, you just pop that instantly and it goes back, right? Boom, death saving throw fails, inspiration. There are a lot more uses to this, so I don't have a complaint about that. Now let's talk about going further in. So now bards have 4 subclass features, because they get one at level 10, and then Magical Secrets is pushed back to level 11. Now, Magical Secrets is essentially the same thing. You can just basically choose something from any spell list, and then 2 things, and then you get more at 15th level. Now, there's a change that they made to all classes, which is to push the capstone, to move the capstone back to 18th level, and then give you an epic boon at 20th level. Now this is interesting because supposedly that would compress all the good stuff into level 18, and I like that a lot because it means that fighter get their third extra attack at 18th level, which means it's on par with like the 3 Eldritch Blasts with the kind of cantrip. Well, actually they get it 17th, but I think it's more kind of on par with how they function, and then also you don't often go up to 20th level, and then if you do, because it's epic boon, it's guaranteed to be like a good ability, and balance, like, because they're all equal. But also, why can't you just make the capstone ability for each one powerful, right? And my complaint is that the 18th level is still superior inspiration. It's just when you roll initiative, you can expend 2, you regain 2 expended uses of Bardic Inspiration. As a bard, I don't think this is what I want. I have short rests that I get my inspiration back. I don't want to just get 2 more inspiration back at the end, when I start combat again. Because again, first of all, it's reliant on initiative, which means that if I'm using it out of combat, for support reasons, this isn't going to ever get me back. But again, short rests will probably, if you're in a support situation, short rests are probably more likely to happen. I don't know. What I wish, because now, because they compressed everything, there's only 2 Magical Secrets. I would rather you just get Magical Secrets again at 18th level. Now, I know that because it's 11th and 15th level, that you're getting Magical Secrets for 6th and 8th level spells, but there are so many low-level spells that when original Magical Secrets was just 1st to 5th level, then to 7th, then to 9th, it made sense because the options you could choose from each were so drastic. I think, though it's less of a creative ability, to have Magical Secrets as the capstone would feel so satisfying. Because what's great about Magical Secrets, first of all, for the bard, because you're literally limited to half of the arcane spell list that is all support based, and you actually don't get normal healing spells. You are reliant on Magical Secrets to customize the bard to what your needs are, right? And your needs are also, you're much more limited, which means that if I was a bard and I'm playing with this limited spell list, I'm going to want a lot more spells from Magical Secrets. So it's not a question. I want Storm of Vengeance. I want all those freaking 9th level spells as my capstone. That's what I would want as a bard. So they give an example subclass for each of the expert classes that changed. First, the College of Lore. So I'll just kind of take a step back and say that what they've done is the thing that all expert classes have is all expert classes get expertise. The Ranger, because the new Ranger gets expertise, right? They have that for the Ranger. Rogues obviously get expertise, and now Bard, and I think that's why they give it earlier on. It's the key aspect. Now, the issue with that is, does it mean that we're going to, like, if you essentially multi-class, you can get, you know, like 6 expertise in 5 levels, which seems crazy to me, unless the new rule for the new subclass and for the new classes is that, because essentially it's divided into 4 groups, like clerics, sort of, which, because druids are in there, arcane, like mages, warriors, like monks and fighters, and then expert classes, like rogues. So, keeping that in mind, it seems like the theme is that all of these expert classes get expertise, maybe all warrior classes get a fighting style, etc., right? Now, I would say the one good thing about, you know, even though Bard spell lists are more constrained, again, we can switch it out. So like cleric, and I love that a lot because it's frustrating because how little spells they have. So just being able to switch that out like a cleric is nice, though again, it's less approachable for new players, but that's just spell casting in general. So why I went on that rant about expertise is because you're just getting more. So the first ability of Lore Bard is bonus proficiencies. There are 3 proficiencies that you don't get to choose. They're history, nature, and arcana. Though, again, if you already have the skills, you can just get something else. And then you also get cunning words. I much preferred... I mean, they're fine. Because the thing is, we lose magical secrets. 6th level, we instead get cunning inspiration, which is... any creature who rolls inspiration can roll twice and take the higher roll. And then... you know, cutting words, we already know that. It's basically the same thing. And the issue is this is a reaction, which, I mean, it's fine. It just... Because you want... I know you're spending an inspiration, right? So it's using that resource regardless, but... Before you could do both. Anyways, it's fine. It's fine. It's cutting words, the signature of the Lore Bard class. 10th level, improved cutting words is fine. When you use cutting words, you just deal psychic damage equal to Bardic Inspiration plus Charisma modifier, which is a nice like incentive to using cutting words. It's fine. And 14th is what we know from Lore Bard, which is you can use inspiration on your own ability checks, and if the check still fails, the inspiration doesn't expend it. So I wish they would have just made that not fail part as part of like the 3rd level ability instead. Like I wish they just combined Eloquence Bard with Lore Bard, because it's, if they take out the magical secrets part, right, essentially this class is all about using Bardic Inspiration better, right, with like cutting inspiration. So it would be nice for the for this Lore Bard to just go all out at efficient inspiration, but it's fine. Again, we still get Peerless Skill, we get cutting words, we get cunning inspiration, which is nice, so no real complaints. One nice thing about pushing back the font of inspiration ability is that now whenever we roll a 1 on inspiration, we get to reroll, which is nice.